Would you believe me if I told you there's a company specializing in the development and manufacturing of therapeutic and diagnostic active medical devices? Well, let me introduce Velentium. Hey guys, and welcome to one more episode of Builder Nation. For today's interview, I'm super excited to introduce Dan Purvis, founder and CEO at this company. So welcome, Dan. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, Lisa. Yeah, great to be here. Really excited to join you today. So early on, I was good at math because it was not an option to not be good at math. My mom was a junior high math teacher for decades. And so that was like mandatory in our family. But as a result of that, I became an electrical engineer, but my passion has always been people. And so really enjoy people, desire to be connected to people, but have an understanding of electrical engineering. And so through the course of events, I met Tim Carroll. Tim is my co-founder. And so back in 2012, we joined together to start Velentium, a new company. And the dream behind the company was to create a company around a culture, first and foremost, to be a place that truly exists to change lives for a better world. We really want to improve this ball we all live on, right? And so how do we do that? We do that one employee at a time. At our company, we really do want to care about the staff and their families. I've got 4 kiddos myself, 17, 16, 14, and 12. Their mama's my favorite person. And so we're family-oriented people, and we really want to applaud the families of our staff. Then obviously as a med device development and manufacturing firm, the patient is hugely benefited, hopefully, by the work that we get to do each and every day. We exist to change lives for a better world, and we've been doing it now for about a decade as Velentium. Tim and I were together for 14 years before that at another consulting firm, but it's been a lot of fun focusing on engineering, but even more so focusing on people.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I can tell that the thing that you enjoy the most is connecting with people. So great background story. It's been over 10 years, right? That you have been the founder and CEO.
Yeah, so we desired at the very beginning, like I said, to be culture centric. And so we had our passion of changing lives, like I talked about. The next part of our company was around our values. And you'll hear me say it around our company a lot, that simple isn't easy, but simple is worth it. To get something truly simple takes a ton of work. I have an iPhone, and when my youngest was 4 years old, he got a hold of my iPhone and he found a game on that iPhone and trained himself and was playing it better than I ever could with zero instruction from anybody else, because an iPhone is simple. It's got just a few buttons on it, one of which is a screen, right? And so as we were looking for the values at our company, it was important to me that they were simple values. And what I mean by that is we went through as a company, me and a couple of other leaders, and said, who are the rock stars in your life? Who are the people you just are overjoyed when they enter the room, or you're super impressed with when you read about them? Historical figures, colleagues, neighbors, sports figures, comic strip characters, whatever. Who do you respect? And then I wrote all those names on the board and I switched marker colors and I said, now, why is that name on here? And so then we ended up with a whole board full of names and traits, and I erased all the names and we were left with just traits. And we played the kill, keep, and combine exercise. That's not really us. Or that one is kind of like that one. Let's put them together. Or we definitely have to have that one. It's got to stay. So we just kept working till we finally got it down to 3. And they're honorable. We'll do right for right's sake. Results plus plus. We do the job and then some. And then humble charisma. We strive to be the kind of people you want to be around. And when you think about honorable, results plus plus, and humble charisma, on top of changing lives for a better world, that forms 4 key principles that dominate everything we do at the company.
So talking about Velentium, now that we know what you guys are doing, what will you say is the main principal factor that you guys are focusing on right now? Because I know that you're an engineering consulting firm, but also you're focused on the oil and gas pipeline and also on the medtech section. So
the more that you can keep it simple, the better. And so we recently sold off the oil and gas business because it was not distracting, but just different from the main thrust of the business, which is medtech. And so in medtech, we are design, development, research, but then also manufacturing. A company could come to us, either an established company like the big guys, or a brand new startup that has their early funding could come to us. And we came up with 9 key areas in med device development that we needed to really be able to champion at the company. And so what they are human factors engineering, HFE, or usability. That's the way that you interact with a product. It can be the way the doctor, the surgeon, the caregiver interacts with it, or the patient, or the loved ones of the patient. So just how do you interact with a product, and is it intuitive? And so human factors engineering, formative and summative studies to make sure that's all working well is really important. Cybersecurity, we live in a very connected world. And if you're making implantable medical devices that are connected, it's Internet of Things inside of people, right? And so how do you assure that that can't be taken over by nefarious intent? And so cybersecurity to protect that is really, really important. Test systems. The idea that when I build a new design, I need to prove to the FDA that it's valid, that it's according to safety and efficacy, that it works in the way that it should. And then I have to prove once it's on the manufacturing line that everyone that comes down that line matches what the FDA approved. So test systems. Then electrical and firmware. So the hardware, the electrical hardware, designing boards around microprocessors, et cetera, and the firmware, the software in those microprocessors within the implantable device are part of our business. Mobile and cloud. Mobile because most patients all want to talk to the device that's inside of them, and cloud because the caregiver or the physician wants to see that data as well as the device manufacturer often wants to see that data as well. The mechanical design for the leads or the titanium cans that these devices go inside of. And so that's 8. And then the 9th one is the one in the middle of all of that. It's systems engineering that ties it all together. So adhering to the standards of medical device development. We have over time gotten better and better and more experience in neurostimulation. And so at the end of 2021, we got some private equity investment so we could afford a factory. And we're in the process of building that factory now so that we can build at the manufacturing level all these designs that we're finishing on the design side.
So right now you're going to be focusing 100% directly on the medtech. Know that this is kind of a transition because this just happened in February, if I'm correct.
That's correct, yeah.
What do you think was the biggest challenge in this transition?
So your listeners, I would guess, are very gifted individuals. They wouldn't be listening otherwise. They're bettering themselves. And what we found is that if you have some giftedness, and we've got some amazing people within this company, you have this perpetual challenge. And it's a challenge to not just do what you can do, but do what you can do best. And the problem is there are lots of things you can do. And probably there's even a ton of things you can do very, very well. But what can you do absolutely best? And so the most powerful word you can learn, certainly something I'm continuing to struggle with and learn to say more and more often, is very simple. It's just no. No, that's not for me. And what you don't know when you say no is how much of a headache you saved yourself or how much of a gain you bought yourself with the bandwidth that you then have. And so for us, the decision to sell the oil and gas division to ADV Integrity had 2 parts. One was just to learn to say no in a very aggressive way, where this is not an industry that we are directly best at, like we can be in neurostimulation. And if we're going to be ancillary to neurostimulation, we want to be in other areas of medtech, where everything that we're doing in neuro also affects what we can do in other areas of medtech.
Thank you so much for your transparency and for your honesty. I think it's such a great advice, being able to say no. And I think that it also has to do with being humble. You know, sometimes we're not as humble in order to say, I cannot do this right now. This is not my area of specialty.
It can be a little scary at times because when you say no, you're leaving openings, and those openings feel strange. Most of us got to the point we're at as founders or entrepreneurs or leaders by being the go-to person that gets stuff done. And so suddenly to be moving into a part of your career where doing things is not near as important as thinking. These are things that are not standard to us as leaders. We got to leadership by dominating, right? And so it's still dominating, but it's dominating in a different skill set that involves more of a step back, more no, and more breathing and thinking and contemplating and strategy.
It is going to be a leadership episode. Wow, thank you so much. This is great. And now that we have your perspective and that we are talking about the role that you represent in Velentium. Normally, whenever we have interviews with founders and CEOs in the industry, most of them are really involved in the procurement process, in all of the supply chain issues. What would you say has been the biggest challenge there?
The supply chain is crazy, right? It's like the entire supply chain got COVID. And it seems like now it's just okay to say, yeah, I can't get you that for months because COVID. And I'm like, man, COVID, it was a while back. Can we please start building things again? And so it's really a challenge, especially in the med dev industry, because whatever you design and develop and get approved through the regulatory bodies, that's it. You can't change it. And if you change it, you have to get reapproved. And so designing around subcomponents of high quality has been something we've been doing in this industry for years, and supplier controls and assuring that your suppliers have good quality standards. But now availability. So designing not just around supplier quality, but supplier capability or the ability to deliver is really, really challenging. We've had a couple of projects where we got through 60, 70, 80% of the development, and suddenly you realize that the microprocessor, the whole thing is based around, is either non-existent or quadruple the price. And so it could really change the whole business model for a client if suddenly the main components within it are 4 times the cost of what they were 6 months ago. It's a volatile market. The spoils in this type of market go to those who have the ability to forecast and to look out into the future and state what will be. But then also, I think the spoils go to those who are willing to embrace risk. And so when you find parts that are available, things like lifetime buys, or at least buying for months to years ahead so that you know that you have supply, that's scary. But at the same time, it also de-risks what you're doing inside. The bottom line is there are just a lot of risks in our development path these days that have nothing to do with the technology. It has everything to do with world economics or the availability of the supply chain. It is a crazy time for sure.
I found really interesting whenever we talk with hardware companies and I ask them how they manage and handle their process of purchasing, especially with the supply chain issues, because some of the engineering teams, they manage through Google spreadsheets or they actually have a system. So how does that work for you?
There's a couple of different ways. First of all, people should always be managed by people, in my opinion. To the extent that we're managing people through a tool, we give too much power to IT and the IT tools that police or monitor to our peril. I wrote a book about culture a while back, and one of the chapters is Be Human. As a human being, we have hopes and dreams and fears and wants. That never changed when we went through our office door. And so the idea that in supply chain, you keep a human element, because ultimately, especially in med device, we're doing amazing things that are for the good of society. And so to be able to connect with suppliers and say, hey, I need this part, and I need this part to save people or to improve people's lives. And this is what we're trying to do. And so we're always trying, even in supply chain, to connect. We were a QuickBooks company early on, and then we have switched to NetSuite. That has been great and hard and great. But the idea with NetSuite is that it can run from design, development, all the way through manufacturing with traceability. When we buy something from someone, I know exactly what part is where. But I would say from a tools perspective, the NetSuite side has really been important for us. And then the other is just the human element.
What would you say are the next steps for Velentium? Are you guys planning on expanding or releasing any new projects anytime soon?
We are contract design, development, and manufacturing people. So releasing new products, absolutely, because that's what we do, right? So people that are helping me on facilities, we're building out a new 47,000 square foot factory where we can build devices for even more people and more devices for the people we're already building for. We're currently chasing dozens upon dozens of opportunities, and which ones of those will sell, and then which ones of those will go successfully through design and development and regulatory and reimbursement and into commercialization. And you just don't know because we are a company full of variety.
Do you have any social media handles?
Oh, yeah. So you can find us on LinkedIn. So we're all over LinkedIn at Velentium. Beyond that, you can find us at www.velentium.com.
Thank you. And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles, interesting interviews, just like this one with Dan, directly on our website, ControlHub.com/builder-nation. We would love to hear from you. And once again, Dan, thank you so much for being here. This was such a great interview. A pleasure.
Thank you, Elisa. Enjoyed being here as well.